Have you ever wondered what would happen if the two most powerful nations on Earth, the United States and China, went to war? It's a scary thought. Something straight out of a blockbuster movie. But it's a scenario that strategists and analysts around the world take very seriously. Let's break down this complex what-if scenario, not to spread fear, but to understand the immense stakes and why preventing such a conflict is absolutely crucial. First, let's be clear. This wouldn't be a simple fight. We're talking about the world's number 1 and number 2 economies, both with incredibly advanced militaries. A conflict wouldn't be confined to just one place. It would likely start in the Indo-Pacific, perhaps over a flashpoint like Taiwan or the South China Sea. The initial hours would be a terrifying display of high-tech warfare. Think long-range missiles targeting ships, air bases, and command centers. Cyber attacks would cripple communication networks, power grids, and financial systems on both sides, causing chaos far from any physical battlefield. Space would also become a war zone, with satellites being targeted to blind the enemy's intelligence and navigation capabilities. The U.S. Navy, with its powerful aircraft carrier strike groups, would be a primary target for China's carrier killer missiles. Meanwhile, U.S. submarines, the silent hunters of the deep, would pose a massive threat to Chinese naval forces. The skies would be filled with advanced fighter jets, like the F-35 and the J-20, battling for air superiority. The initial phase would be incredibly fast, destructive, and decisive, setting the tone for the entire conflict. Both sides would suffer staggering losses of personnel and priceless military hardware within the first few days. But what happens after that initial shock? The conflict would quickly bog down into a brutal war of attrition. The United States, with its global network of allies like Japan, South Korea, Australia, and NATO members, would try to rally international support. However, many nations, heavily dependent on trade with China, would be caught in an impossible position, likely trying to remain neutral. This would create huge diplomatic rifts and international tension. China, on the other hand, would leverage its immense manufacturing power and geographical advantage. It could produce ships, planes, and drones at a rate the U.S. might struggle to match over the long term. The war would become a test of industrial might and national resolve. Could the U.S. sustain a long, costly war far from its shores? Could China withstand a potential naval blockade that chokes off its vital energy and resource imports? These are the billion-dollar questions. The economic fallout would be catastrophic, and not just for the U.S. and China. These two nations are the twin engines of the global economy. A war between them would sever supply chains that everything from your smartphone to your car depends on. The global stock market would crash. We would see hyperinflation, mass unemployment, and shortages of basic goods worldwide. The interconnected global economy we've built over the last 50 years would shatter, plunging the world into a depression that would make the 2008 financial crisis look like a minor hiccup. Every country, every person on Earth would feel the economic pain. Then there's the human cost. The number of military casualties would be horrifying, likely numbering in the hundreds of thousands, if not more. But the suffering wouldn't be limited to the battlefield. Severe attacks, economic collapse, and resource shortages would lead to widespread civilian hardship. The psychological toll of living under the constant threat of attack and economic ruin would be immense. The world would be a much darker, more dangerous place, and we haven't even touched on the most terrifying aspect. Nuclear weapons. Both the United States and China are nuclear powers. While both sides would know that using these weapons would mean mutual assured destruction, the risk of escalation is always there. If one side felt it was facing a conventional defeat, and its very survival was at stake, the temptation to use a tactical nuclear weapon could become terrifyingly real. Once that line is crossed, there's no going back. It's a path that leads to an unimaginable global catastrophe, potentially ending civilization as we know it. This is why, despite the tensions and competition we see in the headlines, leaders in both Washington and Beijing work so hard to keep lines of communication open. The stakes are simply too high. A war between the U.S. and China wouldn't have a winner. It would be a global tragedy where everyone loses. The true victory lies in preventing such a conflict from ever happening in the first place, through diplomacy, understanding, and a shared commitment to peace and stability. The world as we know it literally depends on it. Exploring this scenario isn't about being pessimistic. It's about being realistic about the dangers we face. It highlights the incredible importance of international cooperation and the desperate need to find peaceful solutions to our disagreements. Thank you for joining me on this thought-provoking, if somber, journey. If you found this analysis interesting, please give this video a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the big questions shaping our world. Stay curious and stay safe.